So let's talk about one of the main areas where problems usually become visible and scheduling. Many companies struggle with late jobs, shifting priorities, expediting, and a schedule the shop floor doesn't fully trust. What kinds of scheduling problems do you commonly find during business process audits?
So, scheduling is often the core reason I'm brought into an organization.
Mm,
Scheduling is oftentimes companies have scheduling based on due date, and they try to focus the whole organization on due date as
mhm,
opposed to what is the date that I need to have a particular process done by. And they
mhm,
overwhelm everyone in the organization with too much information.
mhm,
If I'm an operator, I should be told what jobs I need to do, in what order, and the dates that I should be looking at should be the dates I need to be done with those things.
mhm.
It needs to be capacity based. So, a lot of effort should be put into building the correct capacities within your system so that you can program to fill those days and those schedules in a realistic way. If you
Okay.
don't create it at the beginning realistically, you're not going to get it out at the end
Yeah.
realistically.
Well, how do you know when a schedule isn't believable?
Well, you end up being late a lot of the time
Yeah.
and you have unhappy customers, is what
Hmm.
happens if you don't
Okay.
have a good schedule.
What happens when companies schedule by due date, but they don't account for real capacity?
What happens is that you can't get the things accomplished in the amount of time that you've determined that you needed to get that accomplished.
Hmm.
So, what capacity is, you have to think of capacity in terms of there's a capacity of the equipment and there's a capacity of the people or the employees.
Hmm.
And then there are constraints within that. Sometimes
Hmm.
you can shift things around and get something done just by throwing more people at it. And
Hmm.
sometimes there are what we call finite or restricted capacities because there's only a certain amount of runtime, a certain amount of setup time that that machine can take. And no matter what you do, you can't make it go any faster,
Right.
basically.
Right.
And the ERP system needs to accommodate both. They have to overlap each other. Because if you don't have the people, you can't do the process.
Hmm.
If you don't have the equipment, you can't do the process. It's usually up to engineering at the very beginning when you're preparing for the schedule before you even created the job. They're the people who should have been determining how long is this supposed to take? How much time is it supposed to take? And they build this in at the beginning for a quantity of one, essentially,
Mm.
on their routers and their bill of materials.
Hmm.
That becomes the playbook. That's the recipe or the plan for how we expect to build that. They need to build that plan correctly because that plan is going to be translated actually into the work orders and into the jobs. Then those jobs are what you're going to be giving to individuals.
Hmm.
You need to be giving those individuals just their portion of those jobs, mind you, with the due dates on those jobs that have been calculated by
Hmm.
your ERP. Because basically, your ERP system is just like a big calculator. That's
Hmm.
what it does. It calculates when things should occur. And it's really the main reason most people need ERP systems because
Yeah.
it's complex to build a product. To try to do this outside of an ERP system and only the due dates is generally doesn't work because there are far too many nuances as far as when you're going to receive material, what your capacity is going to be. There's so many nuances to that production that the
Hmm.
only way you can keep things correctly in the right order at the workstations where the work occurs
Hmm.
is going to be with a sophisticated system that can do those calculations.
So where do spreadsheets and whiteboards come into play then?
They come into play when people don't understand how to use their ERP. That's what happens.
Yeah.
Someone says, I don't understand how that thing is calculating, so I'm just going to create my own system
Hmm.
outside. And that happens a lot. Whereas, the right question should have been for that individual to say, I don't understand how this is calculating
Hmm.
it. Let me try to understand. And then usually that means they're going to have to go back and find the engineers that put in the estimates.
Hmm.
Were the estimates right or not? And there has to be this circular checking of the system to make sure we're continuously improving our system and our data as well.
Hmm.
So engineering is going to participate in creating the plan, engineering or estimating at the beginning of your process. At the end of the process, you're going to have actuals, what really happened, right?
Hmm.
How long did it actually take? And in a well-functioning system, you're going to be comparing the two and continuously adjusting your estimates to your reality.
Okay. So how do routing accuracy, material availability, and labor availability affect the schedule?
You have to have availability for all of these, for your labor, for your material. You have to have availability across everything in order to actually produce the product in that amount of time.
So those are running in parallel,
They're running in parallel. You have to have all of it.
and people are trying to do that they're trying to do that individually on spreadsheets, and the ERP would calculate and do all of that if we were getting the correct data in.
If we're getting the correct data in.
How many times have you gone into a manufacturer and the supervisor has built out their own schedule, that they have their own schedule outside the ERP? Have you seen that before?
I see it all the time, all the time. Either it's at the operator level, there could be someone in a position of scheduler, there could be operations manager, and then there could be things just like I said, like a hot jobs board where sales is telling them do this. Can you imagine just being on the floor and having one person comes in one day and says, this is so hot, get this done immediately. And then someone else comes from another department and says, no, this is the hottest thing. No, I want you to do this. So it basically, you end up with chaos on the floor because they're like, well, I don't know, which one should I do?
Tell us about a plant where the ERP showed a schedule, but the shop floor was actually running from another system or another set of priorities. I mean, that's kind of what you just shared there.
It is. Let's say you want to motivate your employees according to how productive they are. Sounds like a great idea, right? So if I tell you it should take 3 minutes apart and you do it in under 3 minutes, I give you a reward. This is the kind of thing that we can do in ERP systems if you clock your time. Sounds nice, except for one little problem. Let's say you combine that sort of a motivation, a monetary motivation, with the discretion that the employee has discretion over which jobs they do. Now, which jobs do you think they're going to pick? Are they going to pick the short jobs that require them to keep flipping, go through things because they're due sooner? Or do you think they're going to pick the long running jobs where they're going to make more money? So then you basically have incentivized a behavior that's actually causing you to always be reactive because you're never getting those. Why aren't those short jobs getting done? Oh, the employees are motivated to do the long jobs because that's what's giving them the paycheck, essentially. And this is the kind of thing that I'll see in these audits that'll become obvious to me when I'm walking into a shop and start talking with people. Management may not see. They don't realize that on the one hand, they're motivating one behavior, and then on the other hand, they're having to be a firefighter all the time on their schedule. So over time, what has happened is people have moved away from using the system, and they're optimizing for their own personal gain, their own personal performance, whatever it is that makes them as an individual feel successful in their roles.
Yeah. Well, and then we talked about this earlier, but change is not something people want to come to work and deal with every day. So if they create their own personal pattern and that works for them, and then the owner or a supervisor comes in and says, no, you need to follow this pattern. It's getting everyone in lockstep with the ERP pattern and the vision of the owner, really. I mean, that's what you do. You bring that back into harmony so they can make a choice, like how they continue to motivate people to get the truth into the ERP.
Yeah, another example that comes to mind right now is I was just at an electronics company. They make circuit boards recently. And there was a highly motivated staff. Everyone really, really wanted to give their company their very best. However, one of the symptoms that I saw was when I do interviews with individuals in each of the departments, and I was interviewing someone who does receiving, PO receiving. And in that interview, I ask them how they know, what they need to receive, how they need to inspect things. Just explain this to me. And they pull up their ERP system. They show me a dashboard of the different things that they're receiving. And I say, well, what about those yellow things on the screen? What does that mean? And he said, well, that's inspection. I said, okay, great. I said, so how do you know if that's right? And he says, it's not right a lot of the time. And I'm like, really? It's not right? He says, yeah. He says the inventory parts are set up incorrectly a lot of the time. So I asked Mark to create me a ODBC, this is a connection to the database, to tell me what was wrong on inventory parts. And so what I do, and then he flips open a spreadsheet and he shows me this connected, it's pretty smart actually. I'm rather impressed with the technology. It's live data from their ERP. He shows me the problems and how the inventory parts were set up. He says, I just review this every week and then I go in and I fix the inventory parts. I'm literally sitting here thinking, you're in receiving. Your job should be to receive material, as in count the material, enter in how much you got into the system, receive it correctly with its identifying information. And then as I walked through the organization, I found that these sheets were everywhere. People were looking at them for scheduling. They were in the shipping department, and they were these sheets to show, and they were specifically programmed to show where there were problems. The problem is it was always showing where the problem was after the problem had already occurred, which meant that when the fix occurred, it was too late. And it was causing wild financial variances at the end of the day. And this person, Mark, really, like I said, really smart guy. The fact that he created these, but actually he was the organization's problem because he was making these connections, trying to fix problems after the fact. The real solution that I brought to that business owner that he was so appreciative of, the real solution was to go back upstream and whoever creates those parts should have been doing it correctly. What's so interesting in that situation is the individual who was making those inventory parts, they didn't even know they were making a mistake.
Wow.
They literally didn't know that because someone else in receiving was trying to fix it. And because Mark had been doing these things to identify the problems too late in the system. And so it became sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy where the data was always bad because of the solutions that were put in place by individuals.
Yeah, it almost sounds like what you're doing is helping the owner identify how to get everyone innovating for the company's problem.
Yes.
And not allowing people, smart people, capable people, invested people to innovate on their own all over the place.
Yeah.
And create more and more expansion of where is the actual work that needs to be done.
You need to align accountability to the system in the right places.
Right.
It's really important that a business have the right organizational structure, even to run an ERP system.
Wow.
Another problem that I've seen is what I call very flat organizations, where there's not a clear business structure. Now, I know there are books about running flat, and it sounds like a great idea in theory. But the truth is if you're running a manufacturing company, you need to have some very clear business roles. You need people who are clearly in the sales, who are in purchasing, who do operations. You need leads and supervisors. You need departments, if you're big enough, with different departments for different types of equipment. And these all should flow up in an accountability chart that is really clear for everyone to understand. Each of those different processes, there are actually different processes within your ERP system. There are specific transactions that need to occur in engineering versus sales versus purchasing. And so you need to align the actual organization also with how the ERP system is designed to run optimally. And one of the problems I've seen is when organizations are not aligned, their accountability is not aligned with their actual the way the ERP is supposed to flow. And what that looks like, and where I see the problems there, is someone, for example, is checking the labor records from yesterday. Well, they don't have authorization. Those people don't report to them. And so when they see a problem, they can't go back and say, hey, Joe, you've been entering this wrong inconsistently. You need to correct your behavior. Because they don't have authority to tell them that. They're identifying the problem, but they don't have the authority. So you have to align the authority with the role.